Happy International Women's Day and a very warm welcome to the first Social Work Week of its kind. As you've heard, my name is Sarah Blackmore and I'm Executive Director of Strategy, Policy and Engagement at Social Work England, and I lead the team who've put this amazing week together. Before you hear about what on earth possessed us to do it and how we did it, I thought it would be helpful just to remind people who we are and what we're about. I know many of you will be aware already and will have heard this before, but some won't and may well be wondering who this Social Work England lot are. I'll then speak briefly about why we wanted to create Social Work Week and tell you a bit about the main themes and objectives before I hand you back to Morwenna to hear more about how we went about putting on the week and to see a video from some of our amazing National Advisory Forum members. So Social Work England is the new specialist social work regulator, which is now responsible for the regulation of almost 100,000 social workers across England. We're all aware of the checkered history of social work regulation. We came from a series of social work reform initiatives by government, following a series of high-profile cases, the ones that we all know about, where children tragically lost their lives. And from a couple of reports on the state of education and training provision for social workers in England, where it was suggested that this was well below par and actually not equipping social workers for the realities of the job that they are faced with. So we are still a brand new organisation and have been literally building our team and organisation around us, watching the desks and chairs and computers come in. And we're proudly based in Sheffield, although sadly many of us can't get there at the moment. And we've gone from a group of 5 or 6 to more than 170, plus more than 200 partners. And we're also building our culture, which is one that is firmly rooted in the values and principles on which the social work profession is based. We developed and consulted on our professional and education and training qualifying standards and our rules on registration and fitness to practice. For the first time, our profession has a set of standards that were created and developed by the profession itself and by those who use social work services. And for me, that's something incredibly exciting. And this was a first step for us in what we see as an ongoing and evolving process of dialogue and collaboration with our sector and all of the key people within it. And it was an early learning point for us in our co-production and engagement journey. Ongoing dialogue and collaboration with you is central to who we are and how we operate. Many of you will have already met our regional engagement leads, who are all registered social workers who've been out and about working with a range of partners, including employers, people with lived experience of social workers themselves, and education and training providers. They, together with our education and quality assurance team, are raising awareness and helping to ensure the consistent implementation of our standards, including sharing analysis of when things can go wrong. And they will drive forward engagement across the regions. Putting on a week like this is a key part of that. So as the new regulator then, we set professional standards for social workers in England, including continuous professional development or CPD standards. We hold a register for about 100,000 social workers. So if you want to use the protected title of social worker, you need to be registered with us. We set initial education and training standards and approve qualifying courses, and we evaluate social workers CPD. We also approve post-qualifying courses for people who are or want to become AMPs, that's approved mental health professionals, and those who are or want to become best interest assessors, also in the field of mental health. And we handle concerns raised to us about a social worker and assess whether a social worker's practice has fallen short of the professional standards. We're very much aware that in terms of standards and guidance, it's a bit of a crowded landscape for our profession at the moment. And we're currently looking at the post-qualifying landscape and the professional journey that social workers undertake. And we will work to ensure, where possible, we can align and streamline. If we can ensure that standards are at the heart of social work practice, then we can help to ensure that the support provided to people who use social work services is the best it can possibly be, and that the right people are coming into our profession at the earliest possible stage, emerging from training as competent, confident social workers who receive the support they need to retain and build on that competence through their CPD, through good supervision, and everything else that goes with it. I know I won't need to tell anyone here this morning that fundamentally social work is about relationships. It is for us as a new regulator then to lead the way in developing and nurturing our relationships with social workers across the country in every context, with colleagues who train social workers and help prepare them for practice, and of course with people who use social work services. Doing this and doing this well is one of our main aspirations and intentions. So for this first social work week of its kind, we wanted to bring people together to learn, connect and engage on the values and principles which form the backbone of effective social work practice. Our main themes running through the week are 4, understanding your regulator, social work and me, living the professional standards, equality, diversity and inclusion, social work perspectives, and finally, what next for social work? At a time of great uncertainty, but also a time when social work is so vital to society, Social Work Week creates a space for us to collectively reflect and consider our own personal role to enable change. The week is a chance to dip into a virtual programme of positive activity co-produced with the sector to examine the growing value that social work as a regulated profession adds to society. As the first week of its kind in England, the week is intentionally scheduled to complement the annual World Social Work Day celebrations on the 16th of March, which recognise the hard work and dedication of social workers on an international stage. Social Work Week is targeted at anyone with an interest in social work in England, including social workers, people with lived experience, professionals, education providers, and the many stakeholder organisations who share our ambition to build an accurate and rich picture of social work practice in England today. And on this, our first day, to acknowledge and celebrate that it's also International Women's Day, all of our speakers are women. We have a fantastic day and a fantastic week lined up for you, and I'm delighted that you've chosen to join us, and I hope you enjoy the week. And Moena, back to you.
Thanks, Sarah. That's great. What I really wanted to talk about was how we have co-produced the week. So we met with the sector a while ago now, November 2019, I think we went around the country speaking to many of you, perhaps some of you were there. And one of the things that people with an interest in social work said they wanted from their regulator was an annual conference. So last June, we got together with staff across Social Work England and our National Advisory Forum that I'll go on to explain shortly to start planning. And it was this group that came up with the suggestion of holding the very first Social Work Week. And we're so excited that it's here. We've got a huge programme. I know someone's already asked how many events are there. Well, there's over 70 events in the week. And so it's a massive programme. We're really proud of it all coming together. We've got some great keynote speakers that still have plenty of tickets left. So please do go and see if you can book onto those. We're really honoured that such prestigious people have wanted to share their thoughts about their research, etc., with us. Also, we've got many workshops and an event called Speakers Corner, where people from the sector are contributing. We really wanted it to be for the sector and by the sector, and we really were bowled over by how many people wanted to contribute to the week. Our workshops run into the evening. That was a really specific request from the sector as well. And our Speakers Corner are 3 contributors doing kind of quick fire explanations of their innovative practice. That should be a really good one to get along to. Everything will be recorded as well. Most sessions are recorded and available afterwards. We've got many wellbeing events and we base these on the 5 ways to wellbeing, which are connect, learn, give, take notice and be active. So do get along to those if you can. And we've got some reflective practice sessions in the spirit of that as well, looking at our themes from across the week. Each day we have networking lunches from tomorrow through to Friday, where you can meet people from your local region and with our regional engagement leads. I'd really encourage you to get along to that. Plenty of tickets left, and we would love to see you there and hear about what your experience is in your region and what us as the regulator can do for you in the local way as well. We've just launched our poster exhibition. So for those contributors that are unable to deliver something in the session, you can go and see some of their information on our posters. We will make sure that we circulate the link for that and put it on Twitter so that you can see where they are, and we'd love your feedback, so please do tweet about them and see tell us what you think. And we've got an amazing closing session at the end of the week with Camarados. Some of you may have come across him before. I've heard great things. I think it's going to be a fun and meaningful and poignant session, so please do join us if you can. And finally, we have an illustrator with us during the week. Laura from Nifty Fox will be here, and she will be illustrating various different sessions. I'm going to introduce her at the end of this session properly, yeah, whenever she's in a session we'll let you know, so you know what she's illustrating. We're really excited that she will be describing the theme of this week, which is "This is social work." We really want to capture the breadth of this profession and its diversity, and so we're really excited to see what she'll come up with. So just wanted to touch on the National Advisory Forum, just explain who they are. So there are 15 people who applied to be part of our forum. They provide expert advice, support and challenge to our work and achieving our objectives. And they are a mixture of people with lived experience of social work, they're social workers, they are from all across the profession, educators of social work and students, and they act as a critical friend and support for our work. And we really wanted their voices to be central to this week. So we're going to start this week with an interview with a couple of members of our National Advisory Forum, and so really hearing from people with lived experience of the profession. That was something that we wanted front and centre, and also those who are entering the profession. So there's a student joining the interview as well. Social work is about people and relationships, and we're all here to enable positive change and ultimately improve people's lives. So it's really important that we start with that focus. And we do have a couple of the interviewees with us here live. So at the end, if we can take some of your questions on Mentimeter, then we would be able to pose them to them. So we're going to shortly go to a 30-minute video, an interview that we want to share with you to really set the tone of the week. This video already has subtitles on it, so if you've added captions, then you can take them off, because this video will have subtitles on it for you. And at the end of that, we'll come back and speak to a couple of the interviewees. So I'll hand over to the video now.
So thanks for all coming together and to talk about your experience of social work at the beginning of this very first social work week. So we'll just dive straight in, and I wanted to just invite you to all introduce yourselves first. So Diana, if you want to say who you are and where you're beaming in from.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Diana Katoto and I'm beaming from Birmingham in the UK.
Brilliant, thank you. Tegan?
Hi, I'm Tegan. I'm beaming from just outside of York.
Lovely, thank you. And Yaz, hi.
Hi, I'm Yaz, and I'm beaming from Rutland.
Lovely, thank you. So we're going to talk a bit today about your experience of social work and how that's been for you over over the years. So we thought we'd start with Tegan, and the question is, we'd just love to hear how social workers have been involved in your life and what's been positive and not so positive about that experience.
I've had social workers all my life, but one of the main reasons for having them is because I'm an adoptee. And since I've been was adopted at 4, I have had a social worker helping to facilitate contact with my birth family in whatever format this happened in. And then also a family social worker whose main roles were giving extra support when needed, helping us accessing funding for therapy, and most recently with access to my files, which were about before I was 4. One of the major positives that always stands out to me is we have been very fortunate to have had the same contact social worker from 4 to 18 years old. Also how friendly, open and trusting she was, and always up for hearing what we had to say, even if it was a question or a request, and then talk through it with us. She was also very supportive with my birth family, especially my grandparents, who would sometimes worry they had said something they shouldn't have done. Another positive has been how our family social worker have been up for helping to get me extra support and help when needed. And they've even contacted my school or college to explain and put it in from their perspective, which gave a big boost to me getting support eventually. Also, for there to be more understanding of me and my past with the effect that has on me now. A not so positive is there isn't always full understanding either from what we are asking or telling at our regular reviews. It sometimes felt like we are just ticking off boxes or following a very set path, not having a proper discussion where we can say what's on our minds positively or negatively. Also, didn't feel I was always so valued sometimes. One of the reasons being because of forms given were at a set age level, which was the wrong age level for me. And this especially was not so positive as I'm at the core of why we have social workers.
That's so great. Thanks, Tegan. It's incredible that you have had that same person all the way through. That's fantastic to hear. And thanks for your honesty of where it's not always been as useful as well. I'm sure we might try and get some more insight out of you as we go along, or others might have more questions. So Yaz, do you want to tell us how social workers have been involved in your life and what's been positive and not so positive about it?
Yeah, so the main reason I have a social work involved is because I have a physical disability, and I can't really remember like social work as a childhood, but my mum said that it was always someone differently to mum because of agency, but like since being an adult, I've had probably 2 different social workers who have been like that, who have helped me transitions from children to adult services, from like school to college to work, and recently with housing, I moving from the family home to supported living to independent living. So what's been positive I found with adulthood is having a name social worker helps me build a professional and trustworthy relationship, because you get to know them and they get to know you, and you have a direct contact, like you don't have to ring one number to go through another number to go through another number to finally get what you want. And also, like, adulthood has been very person centered. Like, I'm always in ask what I want or who I want involved in, like, reviews. And then what's not been positive I found is like in like reviews and paperwork and reports. Some of the language they use I don't understand what it's my report about me, for me, but I don't understand it.
That's great, Yaz, thank you. And it strikes me that you're a real success story of the support that social work can offer, and where you can get with that support. And I love how you talked about it being person-centered, and then also how difficult it is when it isn't that person-centered, or it becomes forms and words that you don't understand, and how disconnecting that is for you. I think that's a really really helpful insight. Thank you. So Diana, we'll come to you next. A slightly different setting, but what's your experience of social work, and what's been positive and not so positive so far?
So I'm a social work student, but before I actually started my degree, I kind of had little interactions with social work, and I think that's something that I do want to touch upon, is the fact that in my community, I come from an African background. The idea of social workers is very like looked down upon, and if you do have social workers in your life, you're kind of shamed for it, or it's something that you just wouldn't do. You have to keep everything inside the family. So when I did have a social worker come into my life, it was just for like a checkup, because my parents had just got divorced and I moved to Birmingham. It was just a very like shocking experience because of the backlash from the family. It's not always good to bring people in your business in our culture. So I think that's where my experience of social work came from. But I started to realize that that type of thinking isn't my thinking, and it isn't a lot of thinking for other people, and that social work isn't a bad thing. So once I started researching about it and learning about what social work is and can be, I decided to do a degree in it. And it has been really positive because I'm getting to understand how diverse social work can be, and it ranges from like so many things like childcare, to like adults, to mental health, to charity work, international work. It's just like so broad, and I think that's just a huge positive. I think the negatives I have come across is probably sometimes there's a disconnect between what we want to achieve and strive for and like the practice. Yaz was saying, was sometimes the paperwork can get in the way of like actually doing the work that needs to be done. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be recognized, acknowledged, and kind of changed. Because if we're like coming into people's lives, we need to ensure that we're doing the best possible like service to them ultimately. But yeah, that would be my like positive and negative so far.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Diana. And yeah, I think it's really insightful, that community insight. And there is a lot of stigma around social work in a lot of communities, isn't there? So I think that's really important to acknowledge, and that will be familiar to a lot of our audience, I'm sure. But certainly the added challenges in in different communities as well. And so obviously we're all beaming into this because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We're a little bit earlier than Social Work Week itself at the moment, but I think even then we should still be in the thick of it. And so it'd be really interesting to know how that's affected your experience of social work. Yaz, I know you've had some particular experiences about that. I don't know if you want to share first.
Condition has been around like my care and support practice. Just because like I know with my own company well, Katie and me, Mummy and was going to social worker, and I was going to the social worker, so they were like the middle man almost, and it's not confusing with all the messages and wanting answers. So the social worker would have to ask the mummy who would then have to tell the answer, who would then have to tell me. So eventually we got a new care team who is great because I have the same 3 people on a like continuous rota, so I know who's coming and when, which is very important to me. And I'm also been able to challenge social workers in getting more PA hours to like during lockdown and the pandemic. I've had like no social interaction. It was affecting my mood, but now I've got PA support Monday to Friday, free today, and we do stuff like a home workout, baking, movie night, and it's a lot more chilled. It's not the rush.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's been a really scary time, hasn't it? It's been so uncertain for everyone, and then to not know what your care package is going to look like in that time and how it's going to feel. And so yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's, you know, you found a way, and you've got what you need at this time. But I think it's a really good insight into how it's been for real people in this time and interacting with social care in this time. Thanks, Yaz. And Diana, as a student, it must be pretty tricky for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the difficulties have multiplied. I guess it's always kind of difficult being a university student, but with everything kind of moving into the virtual world, that's kind of created a lot of barriers and a lot of like difficulties. I do have like dyslexia, so learning online is a really big barrier for me. I do like asking questions and, you know, being around people, that social interaction that Yaz was talking about, that's like so important and so needed. But one of the biggest barriers to my education has been placement. I'm in my 2nd year and we're supposed to have a 70-day placement. And currently in my cohort, half of us don't have a placement while the other half are on placement. And we're going to have to wait until April. So essentially that's kind of moved our degree around, like the content, meaning a lot of the stuff that we would have learned after placement is being pushed forward so that we don't have nothing to do. But it is very stressful, like knowing that, you know, other people are on placement and just being stuck in the house and just, you know, that constant like isolation and, you know, not being able to go on campus. It's a lot. And I know that a lot of people, well, a lot of students are complaining about how this has impacted us and we're kind of being ignored by the government, and no one's really taking notice. because even if you're on placement, there's so many barriers as well. So it's just, you're not dealt a good hand either way, so it's really hard. And the impact on the mental health as well, like personally, it's really impacted my mental health. And I don't, you don't know when you're gonna get through the other side of the tunnel, essentially.
Yeah, thanks for your honesty. And yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to that, and particularly watching the student experience across all courses as well has been really prevalent, hasn't it, in the news? And yeah, that the difficulties it's had, and how agile and responsive universities and local authorities have had to be to try and work a way around this. It's a real issue for the sector. So thank you for highlighting it. Tegan, you were saying it's not been that different, just everything's online like the whole world. Do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, it's just, I think for me it's about everything's gone online, and I think services that may have been given earlier or in easier ways have been affected, as I'm currently looking to get my adoption files, and that has all been delayed by coronavirus, so that's a lot harder for the workers and the social workers who are involved in that currently. But I think luckily for me, I've not had too much of an effect, because most of our social work was done by emails anyway, and that can carry on. It's just the difficulties of sometimes trying to get a Teams meeting set up. And I think we had one where we had one person on one gadget, and next we had someone else on another device, and next someone else on something else. So it was a bit of a movie moment. But I think that is a difficulty. I think you can't have a proper discussions as you may do in a room, because I think the room gives that atmosphere of a bit more relaxed. You can have a cup of tea and that, whereas it's a lot more formal on a Zoom. And I think that's been one of the noticeable things for me about the meetings. But I think at least we're getting the information we need to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation, that stripped back nature, so you lose all the softeners and the nice part of it, and the connection, a lot of connection, isn't it? Which, yeah, it's a really good observation. So we are here as Social Work England to regulate social workers, and we're here for those that utilize those services. It's so exciting to hear from you. And I guess what we really wanted to ask is, how has this profession made a difference to your life? And bearing in mind lots of people who are tuning into this are social workers themselves, what is it that you want to say to this profession? I don't mind who wants to go first. Are there any willing volunteers who are keen to speak up first? Go on, Diana. Brilliant, thanks.
I think coming from the perspective of someone that's not in the profession yet and that is learning about the profession, I think there is so many things that we can improve on and that we can advance on. And there are so many, sorry, the noise in the background. But there are so many other things that are really positive. Like the amount of theory and the amount of good practice out there is amazing. But I think one thing that I really want to put out there and to actually give a message to everyone is for there to be a higher level of awareness of the way that we interact with people. Yaz did mention earlier, like the language that we use. I think a lot of the times we learn a lot of theory and we learn a lot in our education, but putting it into practice, sometimes there is that disconnect. And I think if we're more, aware of others, their differences, their cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, etc., like sexuality, if we're more welcoming and we're willing to be, more knowledgeable about the area and more, just more aware and more open to it, I think that would basically birth a more solidified profession, because I just think it's very hypocritical for us to say that, we're all about social justice and human rights, but we don't always practice it. And I think we should be striving to practice it and to, show it all of the time whenever we can.
Well, there's a fantastic call to action if ever I heard one. Thank you. Yaz, do you want to go next? What is it that you want to say to this profession?
Yeah, so just say like from disability perspective, you have to think about the person you're working with and kind of get their views and what I the other professionals in the room on the street, and we'll try think about how they communicate what they want, because not everyone will be able to speak what they want. Some people might prefer to write it down or draw pictures, and actually that is okay. So I think my message would be to get to know the person you're actually working with and get to know how best to work with them so their views and choices are heard.
Amazing, thank you. Another inspirational call to action, and I just love the creativity that's in that, Yaz, that actually it's such a creative profession when we allow it to be and we embrace it to be, that yeah, there's all the different ways of interacting with people and communicating with them and hearing their views. That's great, thank you. So Tegan, over to you.
I think I'll start with some of these differences, as that was one of the questions, and I think the biggest difference to me is made is I wouldn't be here where I am now if it wasn't for social workers. They've influenced so many decisions and routes for me, support, placements, that it would be a completely different story if they hadn't had that impact. And I think it has just made such a big and vital impact on my life. And I think one of the ways is our social workers helped us access the adoption support fund, which I mentioned, and it means I get to attend therapy, which has meant I'm able to talk through anything I feel needed in an open space. So it's like a vow. And my therapist also recognised I should be assessed for autism and dyslexia, which now I'm diagnosed with both and get support for. And overall, it's created a domino effect for a positive and helped me greatly. As I said before, it helped me keep in touch with my birth family, who still means so much and have told me a lot about my past. Those normal relationships could only keep existing because of them. And also, it's just someone when we've had struggles or queries we could go to easily. So a guiding light, and meant sometimes we wouldn't be so lost or confused. And I think one of my main messages to social workers would be, I think, first of all, please be flexible. As both Diana and Yaz have said, this is a person job, it's not paperwork job, and actually you'll have your baselines, you'll have your guidelines, you'll have your rules, but actually sometimes it's a job where you have to make decisions on your own basis and think what's best for the people I'm working with. And I think that's something so important, because I think, as I mentioned before, sometimes they'd follow the guide, like the baseline, too much, and actually that just doesn't feel right. You know, you have to build up relationships with who you're working with, and when you've built those relationships, that's when you can properly start doing your job, because it'll just be like seeing like a family friend or someone that you're actually saying, how do we support you, how do we help you, how do we make this situation the best as possible. And I know some of the situations are very tricky to deal with, but at the end of the day, people are people, and that's something to really remember. And I think the other point is, I think even if you've left a person's life, you'll never leave their life. Social workers' job is for life, and even if you leave them, your impact will be with them forever. And actually, they'll still probably be talking about you when they're in their 80s, going, "Oh, I remember so and so and this they did for me." And I think that's something you've got to remember. And when you walk from a case, have you walked away going, I've done the best I can, and the one that when they're sat at the dinner table talking about me, they'll be smiling, not crying. And some jobs, it will make people cry, but actually in their deep down, they'll know it was the right decision. So I think that's something important, is just remember you're lifelong and you're working with people.
Well, that's fab, Tegan. How inspiring. Thank you. I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you. And I'm sure, yeah, this will have a huge impact. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed that interview. I know I loved watching it back. What amazing women on this International Women's Day. And one of your questions, which I thought was a brilliant question, was what do you want to get out of Social Work Week? And I'm actually going to pose that to Yaz first and just ask her that question. So Yaz, what is it that you want to get out of Social Work Week? Make sure, brilliant, you've unmuted yourself. Well done.
Hello everyone. I'm looking forward to attending lots of different sessions and meeting new people.
That's great, thanks Yaz. And we'll go to Tegan next with the same question. Tegan, what is it that you want to get out of Social Work Week?
First of all, attending the events, and second of all, just seeing the interaction between Social Work England and the National Advisory Boardroom with more members of the public, and what we'll hopefully get out of that will be very interesting.
That's great, thanks Tegan. So I'm going to answer the question too, as it was posed. So what the theme of Social Work Week, it's out there on my screen, is to learn, connect and engage, and that is absolutely what we want to get out of Social Work Week at Social Work England. So one of our kind of core principles and values as an organisation is around collaboration, and this week is a huge part of that for us, so that we get to really hear your views, hear what you want from your regulator, understand what's happening in the sector, and yeah, just hear what's going on the ground. And we're really excited. I think the online platform means that we're able to reach a lot more people that way and hear a lot of different views. And I'm just going to put a plug in again for the networking lunches, which start tomorrow for the different regions, because I think there'll be a particularly great place for that learning, connecting and engaging as well. And there are tickets still available for that, so you can book through Eventbrite. And one of our other focuses as a regulator is that we really advocate for continuing professional development, and that you should be doing that as a social worker and logging it. And we have a place on our website on your online account where you can log your CPD. And this week is going to be really great for that reflective process. So I'd really recommend that you think about the sessions that you've been to, you use the space on the online account to reflect on that and log some CPD as you go along. You might hear us say that a few times over the week. So unless there's any other questions that have come through, I'll just check to see. I know I've just put the Mentimeter up, but in the meantime, I will go to Laura shortly from Nifty Fox to just explain how she'll be working this week and what she'll be doing. So yeah, I think I'll pass over to Laura now. If that's okay, Laura.
Thanks, Moana. Hi everybody, my name's Laura from Nifty Fox and I'm your live scribe for this week. So what that means is that I'll be dipping in and out of sessions and recording everything visually through pictures. So what you will end up with is a suite of mini infographics from this week that capture all of the ideas, all of your wonderful actions to help you reflect on after this week is over. All of those images will be available online for you to view. And I'll pop that link in the chat here, but I think that might also need to be posted on Mentimeter so that you can see it. You can also follow me on @NiftyFoxCreative on Twitter, as well as Social Work England, because we'll be posting things on social media regularly there too. And there's lots and lots of science behind why visual thinking works, especially when you're in conference presentations all day and you're trying to kind of synthesize all these ideas. So you're more likely to remember a visual up to 3 days after seeing it, up to 6 times more likely to remember it than if you just wrote it down or you just saw a report. We can also process visuals at 13 milliseconds versus 6 seconds to process a sentence of text. So not only are we able to synthesize the ideas and make new connections to solve problems more effectively, we're also more likely to care and remember it afterwards. So my job is to make sure that all those key themes and all those key actions are in these images so that you can go forth and change the world even more than you already are within social work. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Laura. And I think that's it for today and for this welcoming session. Thank you again so much for joining us. We're so excited about this week. There are plenty of other sessions happening throughout the day and over the week, so please do go on to Eventbrite and look at them, particularly the keynote sessions. We've got some tickets available for those in particular, and they are going to be fantastic. So please remember to join us at the hashtag Social Work Week 2021 and keep tweeting about your experiences. And once again, happy International Women's Day. Thank you.